Hello, and welcome to my review of No More Room in Hell 2. It is a co-op zombie horde shooter that's just released into early access on Steam, releasing to mostly negative reviews, getting nearly 4,000 reviews in the first 24 hours of release, meaning that the audience are feeling particularly passionate about this. And of course, as we go down here, we can see you get past the first few positives, and then it's just into purely negative reviews after that. Adding to their launch day woes, we have their first few posts on their announcements on their Steam page being about the poor server optimization and, well, lack of servers available for American regions, particularly in US West and Asia as well. This is all, of course, coming from Torn Banner Studios, a studio behind the fairly well-known Chivalry series, with Chivalry 2 getting 32,500 reviews that are overall very positive. So you do wonder what went wrong here, and we'll be getting into that as we go through this. The game initially starts out with you beginning in the menus in the lobby. With your initial character, you have a single skill unlocked, and it is also worth noting before we get into this that this is an early access game, of course. It is in alpha, and we wouldn't expect it to be bug-free or feature complete. There's a in-game roadmap that does show off what they're exactly planning to add as time goes on here. So just to kind of add a little caveat here, we don't expect this game to be amazing at launch. We expect it to be buggy and janky and missing features, but we do expect it to be, a bit more playable with a bit more content than it currently has. And anyway, let's get into the game. The game will spawn you in on a location on the map. As far as I've heard from devs, there are 15 spawn points in each of the regions here. You will spawn at one of them. You initially want to move towards the nearby point of interest to try and gain some loot. And then you want to move into the main objective on this map, which is the power plant. Once you've initially spawned, as we can see here, you'll most likely be in an area by yourself, though others may be somewhat close by. And you'll want to loot the nearby area, gather some equipment, get some materials and things. Make sure that you're prepared to face the onslaught ahead, and then start, as I say, moving towards points of interest with more loot, more things available to gather there. In these sort of outskirt regions, you'll not likely find very much. Often things that you think would have a bit of loot usually don't. And the zombies, it's rather sparse. There's not that many of them here. You'll probably only encounter the odd zombie or two, so it won't be particularly difficult. You'll notice as well as we approach here, and it was the same as we approached the other area, so we get a little thing in the bottom right saying the bar. The objective for this area pops up, and we can now start going about to figure out how to get in. I will point this out as well, the game has no player onboarding. There is no tutorial, the only instructions you get are being able to look at the keybinds in the options menu, and that's about it. Initially, when I was first playing, and this is footage from my first run here, I don't actually know how to bring those objectives up again. The actual answer is to bring up your compass, which also brings up the objective user interface, and you can also look at the relative difficulty of the area you're currently in. Of course, I don't know this at this point, and part of the initial difficulty of the game is just figuring things out. But once you have figured this out, it becomes a lot easier. But we'll get into difficulty as well as we go through here, and I might just talk about it a little bit now with how the actual difficulty works, because it's a bit different from other games in this genre. But yes, so the difficulty system, how it works is essentially you walk into an area and you'll see in the bottom right, as we walk out into we spawn in a mine shaft in this instance. I walk outside into what's the service area, and you'll see it pop up in a moment as we move into the area. In the bottom right, the name of the area comes up, as well as a number. Right? That number, in this instance 5, is the difficulty of the area. To give you a bit of an idea, 10 is the highest difficulty. A difficulty 10 requires you to have a decently sized team armed with firearms in order to be able to survive. The zombies just keep spawning in, they do not stop spawning in, and it is mostly difficult, more elite zombies that are spawning in. A difficulty 0, 1, or 2 area is usually able to be easily gotten through just as a solo, but going into 4 and 5, a solo is going to start struggling and you're going to need a second player, or at least some good firearms with a decent stock of ammo. With that in mind, spawning in a 5 difficulty area here is a bit of a nasty thing, and we've kind of been screwed over. In this second instance, though, we spawn into a low difficulty area. We're in the fountain, its difficulty is 0. So we'll be lucky to even see a zombie here, or I should say unlucky to see a zombie. As you can see, you'll spawn in different areas of the map, in different scenarios. So you might go into a scenario, you might be at the top, you might be at the southwest, or you might be at the southeast. Generally speaking, the map is pretty much cut into those sections. You can almost look at the map as like those 3 islands, as far as I'm able to tell, separated by the river. Basically just that. It's almost like 3 islands and you spawn on one, and that's kind of like your area of the map for this run. And you'll have to get through the gates there to get into the actual map, and so on. As we move out here, we move into the cemetery, and you'll see the difficulty rise from 0, and I believe it goes up to 1 here. So now we're going to actually start seeing some zombies. We can see a zombie just a little bit up ahead there. And there we are, difficulty 1. And still 0 at the fountain. So that's kind of what you're looking for when you spawn in, but you can absolutely get screwed by the spawn system. And keep in mind, this is a game with permanent death for your characters. You can absolutely spawn into a high difficulty zone and just get absolutely ruined at the start of the game when you've got no resources. It's entirely possible. As we move through the map here and through the game, we do eventually reach our first point of interest, in this case the church, and as you can see that's difficulty 4. And the threat level of 4 means that this is going to be rough for a solo player to be able to do without a bit of equipment, and we've not been particularly lucky. That said, so that kind of gives you an idea of how the difficulty system works. I'll fully explain it now, though. Essentially, as you go to areas, the difficulty starts very low on the outskirts and raises as you go into the center of the map. Unlike games like Left 4 Dead 2, where it might use like a game director system where a little function runs in the game that checks the status of, say, like your health, your ammo, your equipment and weapons and things, and then adjusts the difficulty on the fly by manipulating spawn locations and the amount of enemies and things. Rather than a system like that, what this does on No More Room in Hell 2 is as you start on the outside, it is difficulty 0, moving towards 10 in the actual power plant, where it's just endless hordes. In addition to this, the difficulties, as we can see there, it's just gone up to 5. These progress as you complete objectives, and also I think making noise might increase it as well. So it's a weird one. the developers did make out they made a lot of noise about, well, not making noise. They really wanted you to know when on the promotional material that, oh, this is all about, avoiding fights and sneaking around. And you'll see here, like, those zombies aren't particularly after me. And all I do, I go in, I start looting this place. And before I'm even able to turn around, there's a zombie already on me. If you're wondering, by the way, how you can tell how tough a zombie is, the more bloody it is before without it being injured, of course, because when you shoot them, they get covered in blood anyway. But if they arrive at you covered in blood and they have red eyes, that means that they're particularly tough. Red eyes means it's elite. The more blood it has on it, the more difficult it is going to be to kill as well. And so we get an ultra mega hard elite zombie literally spawning behind us, and then all the zombies in the area immediately go for me. And there's also no ability to shove past zombies. Like, you can shove them, but it just stumbles them out of any attack animations they might be doing. That's all it does. It doesn't actually move them out of the way, so you can't push through to, say, get out of a crowd of zombies. If you're caught out, you are dead, and there's no getting away from that. What you really want to do is to try and group up. And we're a bit screwed here in this instance, where I've managed to push through the early areas and get a bit of looting of that done, but not much. I only managed to get out with a baseball bat. And we're in the logging zone at difficulty 8. But thankfully it looks like, and this is quite nice, as you go through the map, it tells other people on the map when objectives are being completed, and so, by opening the gate, it looks like a nearby group has managed to locate me. You can then group up, and it syncs your voice comms, so it's like, you're adding each other to the same walkie-talkie channel, and you can then hear each other across the map through voice comms, should you need to be able to. So grouping up is very important, and while I could not have made it through here alone with my 6 bullets and a bat, we've now got basically a SWAT team protecting me, and we're able to progress to the power plant. On entering the power plant, you're going to have a number of objectives to do. So you first need to get an entry, and you can see us going to do that here. But there are a bunch of different objectives. Again, it doesn't tutorialize you on any of this stuff, so you're kind of just having to figure it out once you're there. The objectives can vary from inputting codes into a inputting codes into a computer that you have to look up in a code book. Of course, God forbid you cannot move the code book across the room so that you've got it in your hand while you're inputting the codes. No, the code book is at one end of the room with the computer at the other, and you have to use the voice chat to talk to each other. One of the issues I will say, and if you do watch any of the footage on the channel, you'll notice this, the in-game VoIP is absolutely god-awful, genuinely so, and it sounds like everyone's like swallowed their microphone. There's no way of like testing it in-game in the menus or anything, like having it record and play things back to you so you can tweak your microphone settings to make sure it sounds right in-game or anything like that. So everyone's just kind of winging it. And you can tell that a lot of the microphones are either turned up too high, or they're crackly, or too close to mouths, or whatever it is that they're doing that's making it basically sound like a jet engine's going past behind them. So you're trying to do that with these awful robotic voice comms in the middle of a nuclear reactor while you're trying to tell each other the objectives and these codes, and you cannot make out what each other is saying. So a nice try at like co-op and interesting objectives and things that require coordination, but a failed attempt really in this instance. Anyway, as you go through, different objectives turn up. Like the one we've got now, you have to actually go to these machines and you turn the dial so that the output goes into a green area with each dial adding a different amount. So there's a bit of that. I don't have any footage of my own of that, but as you can see though in this area, this is now a difficulty 10 area, and zombies are just everywhere. One thing I've noticed with this difficulty system is it kind of ruins all the stealth players. Again, as even though that the developers made a whole thing about, oh, you can, just stealth past zombies, don't, try not to, um, try not to aggro them and try to sneak past. You will often find that once you're in a higher difficulty area, they just keep coming and it tells them where you are, right? There's no real getting out of it. You can't really stealth through. It's not really a thing that you can do. They just keep coming, they know where you are. Sure, this area is a difficulty 10, but I think it's more like that on difficulty 4 and above. So, apart from right at the beginning, just hoping to sneak past zombies isn't really an option. And because killing them just rewards you with it spawning more in, means that really you want to just kind of keep them at arm's length and kite them around and not kill them because they don't reward you with anything. There's no reason to kill the zombies unless they're in your way or you need to clear some space while you're doing an objective. That's the only reason you need to kill them, and you shouldn't be doing otherwise because you can't just eventually clear the area. You can't clear the room out so that you're then safe to work. It will spawn more in to replace the ones that have died, up to a certain amount, again set by that difficulty level. So the way the difficulty works, kind of, yeah, it's very odd. It's an odd choice. It does mean you've got constant pressure on you at least. I mean, so tension's always high in that, but yeah, it seems it means that stealth isn't really a thing, and again, you can't clear an area out so that you can get on with it, which means that really you just get them out of the way as and when you need to, but otherwise avoid fighting. And that's kind of how you should handle it. And so you'll see a lot of groups, and I've started to see it a bit, but you see it more and more as time goes by, that more and more groups just run past the zombies. Another point of contention as well that I'll just point out here, the pipe bombs, you'll see they work like the Left 4 Dead 2 ones where they beep for a bit, then explode, attracting the zombies, but they only beep for all of like a couple of seconds, and the zombies shamble at a really slow pace, so you can't really do much with the pipe bombs, they're not very good, and also when you throw them, they have a tendency to bounce and ricochet around. So you might throw it into a group of zombies only for it to bounce off one of their heads and then for it to completely miss. So not impressed by the pipe bomb explosives either. Moving on though, the next thing that you're going to be doing once you've managed to get through the power plant and do all these objectives is you're going to be extracting. So we can see here we've got a minute to extraction. We're leaving the building. The Chinook helicopters coming to touch down and whisk us away to freedom. And it's pretty good. It's not really like a big last stand finale moment like you expect from the likes of Left 4 Dead or similar such games, Vermintide or Darktide, things like that. Deep Rock Galactic, where there's that mad dash to get to the extract. There's none of that really here. It just very casually just touches down and you get on. The zombies don't really bother you much because it involves climbing stairs and the zombies are allergic to stairs, it seems. And we'll get onto the pathing for the zombies as well in a bit as well. But keeping on track, yeah, the extraction, it's not really a big finale moment. The helicopter comes down, it picks you up. Getting into the build craft and like why you're doing this whole extraction thing, the goal is to get your character out and they will then level up depending on the number of supply items you've picked up going through. Which supply items, by the way, are not shared between teammates, so if you grab them all and hoard them, your teammates won't be able to grab them. So you can end up screwing each other in terms of score, and one person can absolutely hog all the supplies if they want. There is a bit of that. But again, you'll see here we've got an account level, we've got a character level, and your character level unlocks new perks. Your character level unlocks those perks for your character. the perks aren't particularly great. It's things like attacks with two-handed weapons use less stamina, receive slightly less damage, carry slightly more in your backpack. Some they're useful, but they're not crazy. We've got, as you can see an example here, one-handed melee attacks consume more stamina but do more damage and other such things. They're not brilliantly useful or crazy or anything, but they can have an impact. Though you only get a limited number, a max level character will only have 8, one of which is randomly assigned at the start. And so there's not loads of build crafting, and it doesn't massively impact how you would play. Being slightly more proficient with certain weapon types is good, but it's it's not going to be so impactful as to mean, oh wow, I should only use those weapon types from now on. No, and as you can see here, critical health no longer consumes stamina, longer time when you're downed, and we've got that one with one-handed melee attacks again. There's nothing overly crazy in your build crafting, and currently you always enter the game with nothing. We don't keep our items when we leave, so we're not going to enter the next game with that baseball bat. We're not going to enter with our ammo that we picked up at the end. It just won't happen. So you can go out with a leveled up big item like a shotgun or something, right? And you can go in next time and you won't have that. So I don't know how they're going to ramp up difficulty between runs, but unless they do something about allowing you to take more in and things that you had from before, then it ain't going to happen through the extraction system with these characters. Another thing I just want to quickly touch upon as well while I've still got it in my head, just showing the clip again from earlier where we're just punching a few of these zombies that are running at us. So there are a few different zombie, I guess you could call them zombie types, but not really. So there's the regular, garden variety shamble toward you zombies. They might take a couple of hits to take down. There's then the red-eyed zombies that are more elite. They've got more damage resistance. They take a lot more hits to take down. And then you've got these runners. There's also, I've seen a screamer that makes noise and attracts the others toward you. But I've only seen them the once. They seem quite rare. But as you could see with the runners then, they kind of run at you and the animations kind of glitch out a bit. They kind of, sort of... Sometimes, it wasn't so bad then, but sometimes they almost look as if they're like skipping frames out of their animation, or they'll start sliding across the floor. And it can lead to some really funky melee combat. A similar sort of thing happens with the red eyes as well. The red eyes, the thing that they have is that sometimes they'll do an attack, you'll hit them and you'll hit them first, but it won't interrupt their attack. With regular zombies, if you hit first, it will interrupt the attack, and the same can be said with runners. But with the red eyes, they can attack through, as if they've got like, I think they call it like hyper armor on fighting games or something. But they're immune to being staggered out of some of their attacks, and you might see it here we've got a red eye, and you've got to be very careful with dealing with the red eyes as a result. They can easily take twice as many hits to kill, and yet they can oftentimes just refuse to stagger and end up swiping you and trading hits with you. Keeping in mind again that there's permadeath, this is a problem. You've got an issue there. The melee combat I think is quite janky at the best of times. The trick I've found to getting through melee combat most reliably is to do a shove to put enemies in a stagger animation, then maybe swing twice, back up, wait for your stamina to recover, and then repeat over and over again until you've killed them, which can be, you might have to do this 3 times to deal with one red-eyed zombie. They're a bit ridiculous. And we are starting to get now into some of the kind of, we've finished the overview at this point. We're getting into the gripes and the reasons why I think that the game is going to have issues going forwards, and why I think that this was way too early for early access, and I don't know if this game is going to be fine on release. You can see a bug right now on screen where we've hit the head off a zombie, and you can see their brain still floating in the air there for a moment. So we've got a few bugs. I've actually listed a separate list of just bugs as well. I've created like a separate list from my notes just for the bugs that I've encountered while playing this. So that's one. That's one already. You hit an enemy and they might have their brains or a limb or something still floating in the air afterwards. You can still kind of see it. I know it's dark there, but you can see the zombie with that bit floating above them, and now they're on the floor and it's still floating. The gore is really good though, I will give it that. But yeah, you've got that. Other bugs. I've seen most of these in footage because I've watched a few Twitch streams, other reviews, that sort of thing. I watched a lot of the pre-release content. And I have seen people shooting backwards. The animations glitch out when they're aiming down sights, and so they end up holding their gun weirdly so that they're aiming like through the stock of the gun and they can't really see what they're doing. I've seen that one happen a bit. And another one, and I do have some footage of this that I'll get up now. And so yeah, here we go. With keep your eye on the zombie on the floor while I'm just going over this. So yeah, I've seen people aiming down their stock rather than their iron sights. I've seen the fall damage people can take. I've been very diligent about not taking fall damage. Apparently I don't think it's so much that it's bugged. I think the developers have just made a massive screw up with it and not bothered to change it. But the fall damage is extreme. It is straight up, you fall off a slightly too high rock and your bones shatter, go upwards through your torso and impale you in the skull. You just insta die. You can't be revived either from fall damage apparently, so you're dead. Another one is, oh, there's an ammo printing glitch at the moment. One of the perks you can get, so not all the perks are powerless. There's a perk you can get where picking up ammo gives you additional rounds. So, you might pick up a full stack of ammo and it gives you an extra amount. Just saw a glitch there as well on the floor. The zombies sometimes, when they've been knocked down, they'll not do the getting up animation properly. They'll just suddenly like stand up miraculously in like a couple of frames, and then they'll go back into the proper getting up animation, kind of like that then. That's another one. I've seen it so when you hit a zombie in the head, it will knock their hair off. So literally you hit them and their hair disappears. It's a bit weird. But yeah, their whole hair, all of it, just they suddenly turn bald. I think it's to do with when you like hit them, it like deletes the top part of the skull because you've caved the head in a bit, but it deletes the hair with it. It probably shouldn't. You might have noticed as well with this zombie crawler, you've probably guessed what the glitch is. Even when we're crouching down to make sure that the hitbox is lining up and we're shooting him and all sorts, that is an invincible zombie, right? So you can end up with an invincible zombie hounding you down forever. It kind of sucks. But yeah, so ammo printing, glitchy, unkillable zombies. And another one is the zombie spawns. Like you'll notice, so this area was kind of clear. Where did that zombie come from? Where did the zombie behind me come from? We're being suddenly killed by zombies. We were out here a second ago, like, where are they coming from? So I really think that it spawns them just slightly out of sight, like it might spawn them behind some containers or things nearby. But you can end up with instances where zombies are literally spawning out from areas that you've just cleared. And this is a cool feature coming up here. We go into the spectate. By the way, sometimes the spectate cam is just straight up broken. And it's like glitching out with weird balked animations. But in this instance, we do get to see our character, our dead zombie character, in a moment, literally run over and kill the last person alive. There I am. And as you can see, I don't know if this is a spectator glitch where they seem to be like framey and like stuttering, or if it's that the game is just glitching out at this point. I don't know which it is. I'm not going to find out either. It's just that glitchy at the moment. And yeah, just while we're on the topic of like bugs and issues that it's currently having, the zombies really aren't particularly intelligent, and again, the game really loves to punish you for doing any kind of combat, yet it keeps spawning zombies in and just sending them to you. And we'll kind of see what I mean with this now. Like, I managed to vault over this, and this is going to highlight a few issues with the game. It's not necessarily bugs, but it's definitely oversights on the development team's part. So I am firing my gun. This is attracting zombies. It's in a high difficulty area, loads of zombies are coming over. So, okay, well, eventually though, I'll kill all these zombies and I'll be able to leave. Right? You would think that. So, they can't path over. They can climb over some obstacles, but others they just can't, and this is one of those that they can't. Now, this also highlights another issue where I'm trying to vault over these things on my left and right here, over the flatbed truck and the side of the bridge here. That's only waist high. You'd think I'd be able to vault over that, and no. Apparently you were just not meant to be able to get into this area. So I can't vault over anything. Meanwhile, zombies are just turning up and constantly harassing me here. I can't leave because they're zombies, but if I keep shooting them, more will arrive, and so you end up in this like kind of screwed scenario. So it's a mixture of poor pathfinding. There goes his hair. Again, I think it's when you like shoot part of the skull off, it just deletes their entire hair. So they just turn bald. It's really weird. But yeah, so when I was stuck here, this can be quite interesting as well because one person can actually like, if they get in a scenario where they're stuck like this, everyone else can have free roam in the area and get objectives done because the zombies just start going to them and raising their arms up like that because they can't climb over. So you get this weirdness happen, right? Anyone else in this area would now have kind of free reign to go and do what they like and get objectives done, while I've kind of got them distracted here, if they so wished. But again, it highlights issues with the vaulting system. It's very hit and miss. It should work. I personally think like the game doesn't have a system where you can kind of grab low edges of obstacles and pull yourself up, but there are a lot of instances of waist high objects that you should be able to vault over, and the game does have vaulting, that you just can't vault over. So I would put this in as a glitch, to be fair. I would say that does count as a bug, being stuck here. I should be able to get off the side of this. But then I'd probably just die to fall damage. So you can begin to see where these bugs start to kind of join together. Like the bugs are joining forces, and it creates these moments where you just know that the reason, and we do end up getting someone down there, though we know what happens from the previous clip, and they start doing the objective. We do eventually get rid of all the zombies, but once we've expended basically all of our bullets, and this is kind of the issue, and I honestly only think that they stopped coming here and stopped trapping me purely because someone started doing objectives down there, and I think that lured the zombies away. since we've covered the bugs and most of we've kind of done a nice overview of the game at this point, I'll get into some of the issues that I have and kind of the state at which it's at right now, because it is in a state. Right, so one of my main gripes about the game is with replayability, right? And you'll begin to see a bit of one of my worries here. So we're at the church again, and this time we're definitely not going to die, and we grab the fuse that you need in the area, which, by the way, you have to carry it like this. God forbid that it just goes into your bag with the rest of your kit, you know. Apparently I can put my baseball bat or whatever in my bag, but not the fuse I'm carrying. So we go and we turn on these switches. They're all on now. And now we have to install this fuse, and we go and we attempt to do it. But before going, I noticed that there's this bat on the altar here that I'd seen. And I think, well, I'd best go and get that bat before I go and try to make my way through here, because this will give me a nice bit of an upgrade so that I can make it through the rest of the area. At this point, so the church starts, it's barricaded up, and when you turn on those two switches, miraculously, suddenly the zombies have gotten in. So you can, again, stealth isn't part of this game. Like, it says that you can be stealthy, you can't. And you've noticed that there's already 3 more zombies to make up for the 2 that I've just killed. There comes the 4th one coming down the centre aisle. So it's just spawning zombies in outside. What it does is when you turn on those switches, thus kind of starting the objective, because you have to get the first part of the objective is to break down the barricades that are sealing the church. So you'll break down one of them, you'll get in, and then you think, well, the zombies can only spawn outside and come in through that one area. All I have to do is clear out the church, kill everything inside, and then I know they're only going to come in from that one area, and I am safe, right? An intelligent person would think this. No. The moment you turn those 2 switches on, the difficulty of the church area raises up to 4. So it immediately comes difficulty 4. It automatically removes all the barriers on all the remaining doors, spawns zombies behind them to be like, oh look, zombies have broken in. It does this every time. It's very predictable. It's a scripted event, right? You've then got to do the fuses and turn everything on, and then you gain access to a gun room, right? I don't manage it here because I'm solo. Even though I was stealthy and careful, because of that scripted event, and there seems to be one of these at every location, that once you start doing the objective, the difficulty raises. It doesn't matter if you are quiet. The zombies spawn in, they know your location. Stealth isn't an option, right? My first really big gripe I want to just put out there with this game: you cannot stealth through it. It is lying to you. The way the difficulty system works and the way the objectives work is it is not about stealth, right? What you should do in this instance is go through and get the objective done as quickly as you can, because it will keep spawning zombies, in some cases, fairly close behind you, because why not? And a little glitch there with the terrain where it's a bit, sticking up. But so you have these issues with, stealth not really being an option, because it's all about getting the objectives done before you're overwhelmed, and the game constantly tries to overwhelm you. That's what's happening here, right? Nothing else, right? So that's one issue. I've already mentioned my gripes with the combat system. I'll also point out they're planning to do an infection system, right? They're planning on doing an infection system where your character can be infected and turned. In the current state of the game with the melee combat, how it is, like there, you see that zombie, he just suddenly lunges forwards. And if you'll see this with the melee combat, zombies have a tendency to, when you get close, lunge forwards. Like that one that's just swung at me, that was the one stood by the car a second ago. He's suddenly over here and in front of me, and Then we've got this red-eyed zombie, and we're struggling. Imagine if any of these hits could infect you, right? The vaulting system becoming a problem again. You'd think that you'd be able to jump on the little bits of rocks and climb over that. Nope, nope. His brain's floating above his head again, and we can just kind of... It's a very good example, this clip, of just all these systems that are kind of janky at the moment, all coalescing together in a moment like this to create what is a fairly unsatisfying combat experience. And that's kind of the core loop of the game, right? The core loop of the game is the combat, and the... Keep in mind, this is from the people who make Chivalry, which has excellent combat. This has poor melee combat, right? It's poor. It's not good. So, yeah, issues there. And again, with the difficulty system, I've mentioned that plenty of times now, so we'll leave that there. One thing to note is this bat that I got. It was on the church altar. So let's just remember that for a moment. So here we are again. We're opening the church up. So it's there are barricades on the door. You break your way in. All the other doors are barricaded, as I was saying. And I've already found a bat, luckily, but notice on the little old thing at the front, there's another bat. And again, you'll notice, and this is a completely different playthrough, right? Little bit of a glitch there again with the combat. We swung at him like a delayed reaction. It took him like a minute to realise he'd been hit. Then he suddenly flung to the right from the impact. So bit of server lag or something. Same happening there. So the combat has issues around that. Yeah. But you'll notice there's a bat on the altar. We use these panels. So the difficulty of the place is at 3 now, it's going up. We do this, there we go. Now we have to go and replace fuses and things. And you'll notice that it's the same. As we get through here, so now the zombies, I think at this point, are outside, right? And they're going to start coming in. There's nothing we can do about this. It doesn't matter if we're stealthy or anything like that. I think because we've got to the area earlier this time, I think it has stayed on difficulty 3 instead of 4. I think it's like partly to do with time as well as the objectives, but so I think it's like a factor of both of these things. And we managed to actually, in this instance, bit of a spoiler alert, but yeah, in this instance, we actually get the power on. But you'll notice we've got someone else in already, and the zombies are already starting to pour in. But because we've got 2 of us, we're able to deal with the increased amount. But my point here that I'm getting at is every time you come to the church, you will have the same objective. That fuse will still spawn in that room or thereabouts. There will always be a bat on the altar. The zombies will always spawn after, usually instantly, but sometimes after a while. And they will spawn behind the barricaded doors so that they can then smash them open. I do wonder if maybe that person was around outside and that stopped it spawning the zombies outside the barricades so that they wouldn't like spawn in front of his face. I wonder if that had something to do with it, but it does seem to basically, when you activate the objective, it goes, haha, doing that's turned the lights on and thus now zombies are outside. It does seem like it's a scripted thing that it spawns zombies outside to destroy the barricades and open it up so that suddenly it ramps the difficulty up. But the point being is that it's going to be the same. And as we open up this room, all the points of interest do have rooms that do have guns. It's a guaranteed spawn. I don't know if they're different guns at each area yet, but I know that, for example, there are definitely things in the map that are guaranteed spawns. We've seen that bat spawn in that same location now 2 times. And it seems to be that, yeah, because one of the things that they really make out on their Steam page is endless replayability. The game will have endless replayability. And looking at this now, the things that give the game replayability, like you look at, for example, Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead 2 is the absolute king of this genre, undisputed, absolutely the top dog, right? Has been for ages. Other games have come and gone. Many have tried to take a shot for the throne, but none have really made it to that point yet. There's been a few that have gotten close, Vermintide and Darktide, things like Deep Rock Galactic, and others that have fallen by the wayside and not really got there, right? The things that made it replayable were that it had that game director instead of its difficulty system and scripted events. It had some scripted events, but, like the finale stages and so on, but still, it had a game director which would create sort of dynamic on-the-fly events to go with that. It had the random spawns for enemies and equipment that could then be tinkered with by the game director, working in tandem to again create those dynamic and cool and stressful moments, then with moments of relief as you would gear up again and get more ammo, and then it'd send a tank in or something. Not only that, but there's no versus mode on this. Left 4 Dead 2 you could play the campaign on versus mode. This would mean that you have even more replayability, as the zombies would be controlled by humans that would make different decisions all the time, right? In addition to in addition to having human-controlled zombies on a versus mode, right? This game doesn't have any kind of procedural generation. Now, it's something that Left 4 Dead 2 didn't rely on, but games like Deep Rock Galactic and Helldivers both have procedural generation, and it means they can produce infinite maps. This has currently got one. There's a hospital map planned, and possibly more, but one map versus, sure, it might be the same biomes, but Deep Rock Galactic has half a dozen or more biomes. Helldivers has the same, and they can generate infinite maps on those biomes, and they are fun as hell. Sure, procedural stuff isn't as good as handcrafted things, but procedurally generating some kind of city surely wouldn't be an absolutely massive ask, Surely not. But since even the equipment spawns are the same, I'm worried about the longevity of this. If the only replayable feature is that it changes out the objectives between runs, but there's only a finite number of objectives, and even when it releases, there'll only be a finite number of maps, then, I'll put it out there. Currently, I have probably got about 4 hours into it. I've watched a bit of gameplay as well, so but I've done about 4 hours in. I have explored most of this map. I think after about 6 I'll have fully explored it, assuming that it doesn't keep spawning me in the same area every game. I think with lucky spawns, probably 4 hours you could do it. I think that probably in 6 you've probably explored most of it and you're probably getting bored, and I bet by 10 hours you've fully explored everything, experienced everything, and have completed the maps several times. I don't think the maps are going to give you any more than about 10 hours of content, if you're lucky, right? Keeping in mind that, again, combat and things at the moment are a bit buggy and glitchy and things, which, again, make the experience worse, but the point here being that, replayability is going to be a problem with this, right? And just to kind of compare this to other games, again, Deep Rock Galactic would have, again, it's got those procedural generation systems, and it's also got, a really in-depth, character building system with different items and weapon mods and other things. Things like Darktide and Vermintide have the exact same going for them. They've got practically like an entire RPG system where you're coming out and getting skill points every time you extract and creating a character build. Vermintide, which has been out even longer out of those two, even now has a roguelike mode, and they're currently beta testing a versus mode, right? I mean, very soon Vermintide might actually be able to, one for one match all of the features of Left 4 Dead 2, finally. Took it long enough, but it might be able to do that finally, and even add to it. That might be the new king of this soon. But we see all this happening, and it's a case like, yeah, so why would you go on this? And I mention, I mentioned character building and stuff, and even games like Hunt Showdown, which I would say has got a similar like character extraction system with permadeath and stuff. Like you have way more character building you can do and way more perks available to you on Hunt Showdown after you extract a character on there than you do here, right? You absolutely do. So I think the real problem is it's just going to fail to compete with other entries in the genre. And one last note, keep in mind, because I mentioned like Deep Rock Galactic and Left 4 Dead, they have mod support as well, which means they have way more. Like Left 4 Dead 2 will have way more unofficial maps and unofficial weapons and characters and game modes due to mods. It's got like a decade worth of mods going for it. Well, more than a decade worth. Far more. And you can see there as well, on about combat, the zombie getting that attacking and not being staggered in spite of me literally caving his skull in at the same time. And yeah, imagine if you've got an infection system and I would be doomed to die because I got hit there. Yeah, it can be rough, right? So it's got some issues. That said, though, I will end on a more positive note. I'd like to, since I've kind of spent about 30 to 40 minutes of this just absolutely slating the thing. I will say that the gore is pretty good. It's satisfying to just shoot a zombie in the head or bore a hole through their chest with buckshot. The reload animations are quite good. It feels pretty weighty. The gun sounds are really nice and bassy sounding. And on top of all of that, again, like it's just like when you've been really like struggling up to these points, when you find yourself with a big shotgun or a rifle or something, it's very satisfying to do, right? It's not the best gore I've ever seen. I think the best gore from a zombie game I've ever seen is Dead Island 2, which beats everything else by an absolute country mile. It is ridiculous, that game. But it's probably somewhere around on par with maybe Darktide, though there's less of it because there's just less enemies on screen, right? And you don't have like as big crazy melee weapons, like you don't have, a chain sword, So it's somewhere around that region. You can judge for yourself by looking at what's on screen, but yeah, it is satisfying to just gun down a bunch of zombies. So it's not all bad. It has its fun moments. The, finding people and working together and doing the objectives and that is also quite fun, And I think going forwards though, what it needs to do, the game, firstly, it's obvious. It needs to get rid of all the bugs, right? All the bugs just, they have to go. It's needless to say, in a game like this, you can't be having all these bugs, especially when there's permanent death on characters. You can't. It will absolutely ruin the experience. I am wary of them adding an infection system. I don't think they should even touch the infection system until the melee combat is like fixed and properly functional. Because if you're just, getting your character basically doomed to die because an enemy just like dropped frames when they were doing their attack animation and just warps to your face and rips it clean off. I don't think people will find that enjoyable. I know, shocking, but I think they won't. I think that right now the last thing the game needs is an infection system. I think they can only add that when the game is in a more playable state, to be fair. I think that the game needs to decide whether it's going to be a, Resident Evil style. We've got another bobbing zombie head there. Whether we need, whether it needs to be a Resident Evil style, oh, I'm going round, I've got 5 bullets in my handgun and I need to do this objective and I've got my torch and all this stuff. Is it going to be like that? Or is it going to be, Left 4 Dead 2 gun ho mow down 50 zombies? Or is it trying to like transition to that as you go through the lobby and so on? Because I'm just going to put it out there, the game difficulty shouldn't be based on just like adding additional health to the zombies like it is doing. No, it should be like adding more zombie variety as you go through, like special infected coming online or something. It should be adding perhaps as well as like adding zombie variety as like the threat level goes up, or some kind of game director does some uh, black magic in the background. But it should also be adding more zombies. Like the way a lot of these games work is that they add difficulty by adding more enemies and making the waves last longer or something. That's usually how things are done. If they're just gonna go with this, like, no, we're just gonna make the zombies tougher and tougher, a few more of them, but mostly the difficulty seems to be coming from that the enemies are tougher. I don't agree with that way of doing difficulty, and it results in some very spongy zombies, which the great gunplay starts to fall off and feel kind of wimpy, and like your guns are firing skittles instead of bullets. It starts feeling that way when you get to the point where you're literally shooting zombies over and over again, and you get to the point where, and this can happen, where you have zombies with their arms blown off and half of their head missing that are walking toward you, right? And it's like, oh well, but they're a red-eyed zombie. Yeah, it's lost its head. It should be dead, like dead, dead. Yeah. Um, which is an issue. So I think what they need to do is figure out how they're going to do difficulty, how they're going to do, is it going to be more of a serious survival, like Resident Evil style thing, or is it going to be a more, gun ho Left 4 Dead thing, or do they want to transition as you go through the map, or they need to figure that out, figure out the pacing, and once they've got that done, they then need to work toward it. And in addition, I would say that the perks and things and the rewards for extracting are poor at the moment. And I almost feel like you should be able to like queue up for different difficulty missions. But the problem, of course, is going to be that are people going to queue up for the harder missions without the proper equipment and characters? Like, how would you match make things if you've got level 50 characters in the queue and level 1 characters in the queue? Like, is this going to split up the player base into different like matchmaking bands? How's that going to be worked out? Are you going to be able to like buy gear and do loadouts in between games? I'm assuming you can, because all the supply points do at the moment is allow you to level up your account level, but there are loadouts on the menu that are currently locked. So presumably, you'll eventually be going around with different loadouts, going around with being able to use those supply points to maybe buy weapons and equipment to take in next time and so on. Surely, I'm guessing that's where they're heading with this. But I'd be curious to see how they get that to work. But I think definitely they need to decide the type of zombie game they want to be. I think they need to definitely fix the bugs. It goes without saying, this many bugs, especially game breaking ones. Like one I haven't mentioned as well, like a really nasty one. While we're doing like objectives here, you can get a bug where you get stuck doing an objective, So you'll like activate the objective, it'll zoom in on it, and you won't be able to get out from it. I think it happens if two people press it at the same time or something to interact with it. So you can just get stuck, and that's your character gone basically. And that's the other thing as well. I think characters, it's hard to feel bad for losing a character when it's like, oh no, my character that survived one time and had, two somewhat useful skills on them is dead. It's I hate losing a character on Hunt Showdown. You lose a character on Hunt Showdown, they've got like, a dozen perks that are all pretty useful and good, as well as all their really good equipment and things. Like, you need to have some kind of, you need more stakes. When it's like, I've not even lost equipment and I've lost maybe two perks, it's not a big deal. Right? You can't even customize them or change their outfits yet. It's planned to be added to the game, but it's down the list. It'll be a while before that's added, I reckon. They've got everything else to fix first. They'll be firefighting for a few months, right? Um, but yeah, it's so yeah, they definitely need to think about what they're going to do when you extract. There needs to be more character builds, you need to have more choice over it. I think you could be. I remember playing Back 4 Blood. You can create some crazy builds with their kind of deck building system on that game. I mean, if you're looking for something Left 4 Dead like, then Back 4 Blood is a chronically underrated game that people just slated. But I really like it because it's a roguelike deck builder. And you can do some crazy stuff on it. The bonuses on that aren't, melee weapons use slightly less stamina. You can get things like, melee weapons, use practically no stamina, regenerate health on hit, Each attack makes subsequent attacks go faster in a stacking buff that lasts a few seconds and crazy stuff like that. You can get, stuff like lose the ability to aim down sight, but gain 50% hip fire accuracy or something, you know. Gain, lose all the movement speed debuffs for side strafing or walking backwards and just basically play it as if you're playing Doom. You can, get ones that are, bonus weak spot damage and extra damage for when you're aiming down sights and just, snipe zombies, like clear through, just hit them in the chest and it blows their entire upper torso off because of the amount of damage you do. You can get some really crazy character builds going in that. I'd love to see something like that in here, or if this was similar to Hunt, where, you extract and it's like, okay, you've extracted, here's a bajillion experience and a million different perks you can buy. It definitely needs something like that. But yeah, my main worry, the elephant in the room, the bugs are just there as a smokescreen. The real elephant in the room with this game, I would say right now, is how replayable is it, right? If one map can give me 10 hours of content, how many maps would be needed to make the game justifiable in purchasing? And I'm saying 10 hours to be generous. I think that's, you've been everywhere, seen everything, done a few of them a few times over, and really squeezed every drop of content out of the game, right? I mean, are they going to make a map a month, after launch to keep players on? Because keep in mind, this is a multiplayer only game. If it isn't replayable, it will lose its player base. If it loses its player base, it's dead. It's a multiplayer game. So that's where my worries would be at the moment. I said I'd finish on some compliments and things, but yeah, as far as compliments go, like I say, it's cool doing the objectives, working with people, meeting them out in the environment, even though the VoIP's crap. In spite of everything, it's still extremely satisfying. As you can see now, we're blasting everything with a shotgun. It's extremely satisfying. And getting these objectives done and you're getting out and doing it with a big team of players is nice. But it could be a lot better. A lot better. Right? And the gore's great and the combat's good when it's working. And when you're not seeing like heads floating above them after you've knocked them out, or limbs nearby hovering around, or when they don't glitch in the combat animations and phase through your bat and smack you in the face. God help us when they add the infection system. You know, it's got a long way to go. I think if you were looking to purchase this right now, I would definitely advise against it. I personally would say Dark Tide just got a big update. Buy that. That's what I would personally say. Or if it really had to be specifically zombies and a zombie co-op game you're after, I believe COD releases this week and it will have a zombies mode as usual. So there's that option as well. My personal favourite in recent years has been Back for Blood, which I think is horribly underrated, but maybe that's just me. My point being that there's games that are out there that are better than this, that have more features than this, that are more replayable. The good news is that this is in alpha state, and as it is in alpha state, it is very much it's early, it's nice and early, and they've caught all of this feedback early. The game can pivot a lot in the next year or two before release, right? It could become the game we all want it to be, but it's a could, it might, it's possible, right? It's not necessarily going to. So yeah, but hopefully it does. I'd like to see that. Um, One of my personal little favourite little sub-genres is this. I really like them. They're good fun with mates. So, and it's been a while since I've had one. I've recently, like I said, I've gone back to Dark Tide because of the update on that lately. That's redone how you gear up your weapons and things, made it a lot more user friendly and more more respectful of your time, not making you re-roll everything a bajillion times to get anything that you want. So, and I've been having fun with that. But right now, yeah, it might get the work it needs, it might not. For now though, thank you very much for watching. And I do genuinely hope they manage it. I do. I'd love to see this as a fully functional title. I mean, they could add a versus mode, they could add mod support, they could do all these things in early access. But as you can see here, we're already getting a full 8-man team extract from this. This was my fourth or fifth game. It won't be long till everyone's figured out how to play the game, and everyone's just extracting all the time. And as that starts to happen, yeah, the replayability and the player base are just going to go bye-bye. But we'll see how it goes. Thank you very much for watching. This has been my in-depth look at No More Room in Hell 2. And all of the clips that this is taken from are all from the footage I've filmed that will be on the channel as a small playlist playing the game throughout the Halloween season as a bit of a spooky special on the channel. Go and have a look if you want to see more footage before you decide whether or not to buy this. But for now, if you like the video, drop a like. If you want to see more from the channel, maybe go and have a look at some of the videos that this footage is from. It's all up there. Hit subscribe if you want to keep notified about it all. Hit the notification bell. And I hope to see you in future videos where we'll look at other games, play through them, and more on the channel. I hope to see you then.